A heads up that today's episode discusses domestic violence, so if this is a topic that is difficult for you, you may want to skip this one. If you are a victim of domestic violence and you are in the United States, you can reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Hello, and welcome back to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I have seen the series through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and I'm experiencing these episodes for the first time.
And today we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 10, titled Sex, Lies, and Larvae. Original air date, December 22nd, 2000. Director is Thomas J. Wright. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker, Josh Berman, and Anne Donahue. So we begin with the Vegas Strip.
Do we?
Yes, I'm fairly certain we do. Vegas Strip and then to the desert.
Oh, I don't. Well, maybe this is confusing.
I feel like it's Vegas Strip for a little bit, and then we pan over to the desert.
There are some intermediate. I think we start in the desert. I wonder if I've misstepped here, because remember I told you, I think last episode, I don't know if I said it on the recording, but that I accidentally played the next episode.
Yes.
But I thought I went back and checked, because I gave this a Vegas score of 0 for having no Vegas intro.
Oh, for having no Vegas intro. Okay.
There are these weird interjections of Vegas scenes throughout the episode, which I feel like with them trying to make up for it. But I thought there was no Vegas intro. So I'll be honest, we're recording maybe a little later the week than we normally do. And yes, I haven't watched this in like 4 days. So I do not remember 100% with 100% certainty.
Okay.
But yeah, so tentatively, we'll have to update on social media if I find out I'm wrong. But tentatively, I believe I'm currently giving this a Vegas score of 0, which is a record. Okay. I misled Lauren before the podcast.
Yeah, I thought he meant record the highway, and I was like, wow.
It's a record low, like our Southwest rainfall.
So let's find out if we watched the same episode or not. I think we should be able to find out pretty soon if we watch the same episode.
Oh, the right episode, for sure.
Okay, so we move to a couple hiking. The lady needs the shovel to do her business, and in so running off into the desert to find a spot to herself, she finds a body. Her name is Angie, not the body, the woman who finds the body, and that body is covered in bugs.
Yeah, as someone who's done a fair amount of camping in their life, if you had to go to the bathroom that bad, the shovel can wait. You know, you can dig a hole, you can throw it in. You
can always cover it. Right.
And he was being like, the dude was being kind of a brat about it. You know what I mean? Like,
he was.
It was unnecessary. When somebody has to go, they have to go, man. Don't be mean. But that was my one thought. It was like, you don't need the shovel to get, if you have to go that bad. And then she turned down the thing you probably did want to bring with you, which was toilet paper.
Yes. Yes, that was a thing that she was like, that can wait. We don't need that. Too much right now.
But I do appreciate the leave no trace, nothing but footsteps if you can approach.
Yes.
It's a good message, especially I imagine in the high desert of the Southwest, some of these things can linger for quite a while.
Yeah, I would think so.
I do appreciate that.
The dry air. So we then shift over to Grissom and Sarah at the crime scene at night. We learn that the victim suffered a gunshot wound to the head. That's what Jim Brass lets us know. We also soon learn that the insects surrounding the body are paper wasps. They are harmless. And I forgot about this until I saw this scene, but Grissom uses coffee to preserve the bugs. He takes coffee from one of the officers nearby and uses the coffee to preserve the bugs. He also... I like that he does that. Names them after the Beatles.
Yes. I like that he does that, and then also, but like the bugs aren't dead. Like he has like a whole host of live bugs throughout the episode. It's
yes, like he borrows beef jerky from Sarah to feed to the bugs that he keeps alive, because he doesn't want them to die. He wants them to stay alive. Yeah. So he borrows beef jerky from her to feed the bugs. We also learn in the scene that the victim wasn't...
So what if the victim died from a caffeine poisoning, and now your coffee has tainted the bug? Do you remember that episode where they had like, you got to examine the bugs, and whatever the bugs are high in, then that's what your victim was bugging?
They had to dissect the maggots.
Yeah.
Yes, they had to dissect the maggots.
And I was like, oh, you threw it off. Grissom, you ruined the evidence. You might as well have walked in the middle of your crime scene.
Just stomped all over it.
But it was a funny line. I know why they did it, but I was like, I think if there was a real Grissom out there, I think he probably carries in his kit a bug preservation mini kit. You know what I mean? Because he's such a bug expert. And bug is, we're only like 10 episodes in. Looking at bugs for evidence has come up at least 3 of 10 episodes. So as far as I can tell, he would use it all the time.
Yes. And there's like a line in here from Eckley later on in the episode, spoiler alert, where he refers to Grissom like as the bug expert and how that brings like accreditation to the lab. So we're reminded quite heavily in this episode that Grissom is a well-esteemed bug guy, and this is something
preeminent.
Of. Yes, preeminent. We learn that the victim wasn't killed at the scene, and then we pop on over to credits. We then move over to the team in the kitchen. Grissom comes in. A missing person case goes to Catherine and Warwick, and we're also told that Warwick needs to testify in a court case. This is brought up, and this is important later on in the episode. Nick gets a missing person case, a one Cheryl Applegate, whose car was found at a bus station, but she was nowhere to be located.
You need help with your homicide?
No, Sarah's going to work with me. You get a missing person, Cheryl Applegate. Her husband notified the police that she took the car and headed to L.A., but she never showed up. A few hours ago, PD found her car at the bus station. They requested a CSI.
She took the bus instead. Case solved.
And obviously, Grissom and Sarah are going to work the bug scene. So we go to Catherine and Warwick.
I was going to say one thing was like, this will come up in a little bit, but I got really confused because they made it sound like there were 2 missing persons.
Yes.
But then they referred to one of the cases as the missing person case, which, they explain this moments later. But I was like, what? And I had I think I went back and I clicked back through and watched him re-hand out the assignments. Also, I must confess, there were 7 seconds of Vegas Strip intro in this episode.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought there was Vegas Strip in there. I
realized,
am I crazy?
I realized I could just play it, and so that we're going to elevate this to a Vegas score of 1.
Okay.
Which is not a record, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we go to Catherine and Warwick arriving at a house/mansion. Before they walk inside the house, Catherine and Warwick have a conversation where Warwick admits that he got a call from Child Services. So we do finally harken back to, I think, 2 episodes ago now, where Child Services let Catherine know that they had opened an investigation on her due to a complaint filed by her ex-husband / possibly still husband Eddie. We meet. I
think we've identified that some of these episodes might be filmed to be standalone. Yes. I think this is the first time where they're advancing a lot of the tropes in the through lines of this episode, and some of the characters who repeat. This is the first time in 2 episodes we've had them, which is why I think it took so long for us to get back to this Catherine storyline.
Yeah. We are introduced to the person who called in the quote-unquote missing person case, Richard Ziegler. We then quickly learn that Paul Sorensen is not, in fact, a person. Paul Sorensen is a painter, and it is one of his paintings that is missing from the house. Catherine and Warwick very quickly decide that this is an inside job, and there's another quick discussion about the call with Child Services. We then go to Sarah and Grissom with Doc Robbins, and it looks like this is a homicide. Crazy enough. Our bug lady dumped in the middle of the desert. Possible homicide. Yeah. It was a .38 caliber bullet to the head, and it looks like it was flush to her head, pressed up against her head when it was fired. So obviously very intimate.
They talk about facial fractures from the from the shot.
Yeah, so they look at the X-rays, and the fractures indicate a battered woman syndrome.
Oh, that's what that was. Yeah, right. I was I wrote down facial fractures, and I don't know why, because I thought it was important.
Yeah, it is important. It is very important. So they look at Doc Robbins had done some X-rays, and there was a lot of fractures in the face, and that indicated most likely from the result of domestic abuse. But Doc Robbins is not able to figure out time of death. He says that we need to rely on Grissom and the insects to figure out TOD, time of death. And this is when I think Grissom finds a musket fly, which is only found in urban areas. Dun, 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 dun. And the body was found in the desert. So, yeah.
I meant to look up what a musket fly was. I haven't, but
I did not look it up.
I'm pretty sure I just call them flies because I've lived in the city my whole life, or most of my life.
That's fair. Yeah. We go to Catherine asking Richard Ziegler, or Ziegler, I think it's Ziegler, who has access to, there's like a security panel. So like who has access to it. We find that basically the entire family. So the husband, the wife, daughter, 2 sons. Warwick also finds an ear print on the wall. So this is our like first big piece of evidence in this case is Warwick finding an ear print on the wall with the idea that the person pressed their ear against the wall to then look and lift the painting from the wall. So
unrelated to watching this episode, we just hung art in my house.
Oh, okay.
And we got this like hanging rail system. And I can confirm, I spent a long time with my head pressed against the wall, trying to see behind the painting as we're trying to adjust everything, like get the wire on the hooks and all those things. And then so I think I watched the episode right like the day we hung the art, and then it was like ear on the wall. I was like, yeah, I bet you there's an ear print of mine on this wall.
You're like, if I dusted this, especially with Grissom's.
And
I wanted to call it red velvet, but that's not the
pink rager or something.
Yeah, what was it called? Listeners, let us know. But whatever Grissom's special print dust was,
if you had
some of that, you would have been able to find those ear prints in your house ASAP.
Yeah, I probably also have an ear print on the back of the painting because you're basically my head was squeezed in between the painting and the wall. You're trying to get as close to the wall as possible. It was a whole thing. And then sadly, the artist who we hung the art for died this week.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And I mean, I guess it's good for the art value, but
yeah.
But not great Richard Ziegler would think that. But
yes, he would.
I felt really sad because I really like this art, and I'll probably never be able to get another piece. But I was very happy to have hung it.
Yeah.
And it made me really empathize with people who like art, like the guy in this episode.
Yes.
Even though he's probably the kind of art collector I don't like. Like if you're ever doing an art event.
Yeah, they don't exactly paint him in the best light. So
status symbols.
Yeah. We go to Grissom with bugs, crazy enough, and Sarah comes in, is asking some question about the bugs. Grissom is letting her know that bugs arrive at the corpse at certain times, so he should be able to do a linear regression to figure out how long the body has been out there based on the bugs, where they are in their stage of growth.
I hated the use of the term linear regression here. Okay. I don't even know if it's okay for me to hate it because I don't know if it's accurate. Okay. But in math and data science and the kind of fields I run in, linear regression is a very specific term, and it has nothing to do with what they're talking about. And I just think somebody knew the term and thought it. They were like, that sounds
good. Right. That sounds scientific. Yeah. Let's use linear regression.
But I got what they were saying when they used the words, and I was just like, I hope this is really a term that gets used in this field, because otherwise it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I was like, I should have looked that one up too. I should have seen if that's a common thing in forensics or something.
I feel like it comes up again. I feel like this is not the only time that we get linear regression, I'll be honest. So we also learn in the scene that the husband's name is Scott Shelton, and I had to make a note that it is poignant, I think, especially as the episode continues to unravel, that we learn the husband's name before we learn the victim's name.
Oh, I didn't think of that, but I did write it down. I wrote them down at the same time. I may have gone back, or in the same line, I may have gone back and added her. But that guy gave me such the heebie-jeebies. I could not stand.
Well casted.
Well acted. Well directed.
Well casted.
I have this weird thing. I always wonder, people who are good at being mega creeps. I'm glad you found a job that you like to do. Yes. But why are you so good at this?
Do I want to know why you're so good at this? I probably don't.
Not why you're so villain. Not why you're a good villain. You know what I mean?
Right.
But why you're like Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained is a great villain, but like that, I mean, maybe that's not the best example because he's kind of a weird guy anyways, but
He is a weird guy.
you know, you can do that. Or Christian Bale, again, he's got other issues, but
Yes.
he's you know, you can be a villain, you can be a good guy. Like they have range, I guess is the acting term.
Yes.
Where this guy, I was like, is this all you do? Is be like a super creepy weird guy who makes me really want to hate you? Because you do it really well.
He did it
And
very well.
that's definitely a skill, you know. I mean, I certainly couldn't have done that, but yeah, the whole time I was just like, later on I have a funny note about that whole storyline, but you know, he creeped me out.
Yeah.
Also, if I recall correctly, I wrote in my notes, Grissom, remember he was like, there's like 3 things I hate, and one of them was like people who abuse women.
Yes.
And one of them was like kids, and so it's like, I was like, oh, this is one of Grissom's big 3, but he never really had an outrage towards this guy.
No, Sarah
Any
has the outrage.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, you should be dogpiling in, you should be supporting her, and I felt like he really didn't follow through with that this episode.
Yeah, no, he really did not. He seemed like baffled as to why Sarah wouldn't like him, and it's like, come on, man, this should be pretty clear why Sarah's really angry at this
Do you remember
guy.
he like almost punched that dude in the desert, the drug dealer guy? It's like,
Yes.
Sarah's doing the same thing you did, man.
Yeah.
Like, and you said this is one of your big 3. Like, you should have had her back, supported her. So that's like the one. Like, I actually think there's pretty good writing in this episode. That was the one thing where I feel like Kristen's character, it's like they didn't get the memo, right?
Yes.
That I think it was mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah, I
But,
think they relied too heavily on his obliviousness, which has been a major component of his character up until now, but seemed to forget that he is passionate about certain things, and one of the things that he's supposedly passionate about or against is violence against women, but then can't seem to understand why Sarah hates this guy.
I also always have to ask myself when we watch these episodes that are like 20 years old, how much of this is temporal? Because
Yeah.
I would consider it really bad by today's standards to have your idea of it's the woman's job to be mad at a dude for abusing other women, because it's everyone's job, man.
It's everyone's job.
It's like, so like showing support.
Men step up to the plate.
Yeah, showing support. It's like, and so, but like that's sometimes like I feel like in the late 90s and the early 2000s, we thought like we were doing great steps, but when you look back today,
No.
you thought, well, like, man, were you phoning it in?
Yeah.
Some of these times, like the PC of the late 90s is such a cop out.
I agree.
To like what we should, and like it's like, am I gonna feel that way about things today, 20 years from now?
Quite possibly, yes.
I was like, because like that's basically history. It's like we have to move in like generational crawl, and it's like, oh, it's so bad. I really hope it's not that. I don't know. People are much better, I think, today in general, but maybe we'll be even better 20 years from now. And that,
I hope so.
and I guess if we can be that much better 20 years from now, that's a great thing. So
Yeah.
I should not worry about it.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, and I'll just say this is my perspective from being a non-binary individual, that I hope that we're better 10 to 20 years from now.
Yep.
Just from my own lived experience and my own just having to deal with people that really don't want to think that, or with people who really want to button down on the idea of 2 distinct gender categories and that's it, and that those gender categories have very specific criteria to them that like everybody has to fall into. I really hope that that's not the case 10 to 20 years from now.
I like to call those people the my way or the highway crowd, because
Yes.
I feel like that's a term that people have already associated with being like an awful position on anything.
Yes.
Right. And but that's what they're doing. They're saying it's like, if you aren't doing something the way that I do it, I don't want to love or support or encourage that. I want to actually suppress it and call it evil and, you know, try to pretend it doesn't exist. And those things are all really bad. Picked Tara up from the train station yesterday, and I was like waiting at a red light, and I saw 2 guys, and all of a sudden I realized they were holding hands, and they seemed so jovial and happy, like swinging their arms. And I went, man, that would have been so hard for people to do, like even 40 years ago.
Oh,
Like,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, or like it was probably pretty tough for people to do 20 years ago, and these were just young kids. I mean, they were probably out of college, but they're young
That's
adults.
young to us.
Yeah. They weren't like 17; they were like 25.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But like, I remember thinking, like, I'm so glad that people can just find each other these days.
Yes.
Because like these two people would not be happy if you force them to live a different life, right?
Oh,
They-
we're getting... Sorry, listeners, if you're hearing one of my cats purring coming through my microphone, because one of my cats is on my shoulder and she is literally leaning into my microphone.
You don't. You mean you don't have a gas-powered microphone, Lauren?
I don't.
It's humming with a little V6 engine.
Don't.
No.
Come here.
All right.
How about you move down here? All right, so we
But-
back on track here.
Just
Oh,
to bring it back
before we-
around.
Yes.
Men, do better, man.
Yeah.
Support anyone of any identity
Mm-hmm.
who calls something out. It's like stop, pause, think about it, and if you agree, make sure you have their back.
Yeah.
And if you don't agree, ask yourself why you don't. Maybe they can educate you on something,
Right.
or if you need to educate them on something, because there are definitely people out there who are complaining about things they really shouldn't be. Like, they would complain if they saw two men holding hands skipping down the street,
Right.
thinking it's wrong, and you should educate them that no, actually, it's quite right.
Yeah, that is totally A-okay. So I agree. Men do better. So we head to Grissom, Jim Brass, and Sarah in the interrogation room with the husband, Scott Shelton. They show him the x-rays. His super lame response is that he had to, quote-unquote, wrestle her off of me several times, obviously trying to put the blame on the victim. And when Sarah starts kind of talking back to him or kind of confronting him in some ways, he ignores Sarah, looks at Grissom, and is like, oh, you must have your hands full with her.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I mean...
Again, kudos to the actor. You did a great job of coming off as a total sleaze. Like, you did this so well, but ugh, it's uncomfortable to watch. So...
I feel like if this show was written today, the response to that line would be punching the dude in the face.
Yes, and I feel like I'd
Which-
be okay with that.
I'm not, violence is not the answer, but, it's good
Debatable.
fan service.
Debatable. We move then to Nick at his crime scene, which is the found car at a bus terminal. He then meets with a detective there. There's this awkward conversation where I guess they went out for dinner last week. He never called her, and he's like, "Oh, well, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to call you." No, you don't
What
wait
a-
a week. You do not wait a week, you jerk. If you
What a
if
terrible response.
so terrible. Like, it doesn't mean I wasn't going to call. Oh, so when you had no other options 3 months from now and you were lonely, you're going to give her a call? Like, okay. All right.
Do I believe the character of Nick Stokes would take 10 days to call a woman back? Yes. Is that the right answer to that question? No.
No. No, it is not. It is the wrong.
Did she let him off the hook too easy? Yep.
Yes. He was allowed to just skate on that, evidently.
She rolled with that. She was just like, yeah, okay, I guess that's reasonable enough.
Yep. Fair. Who knows what the future will hold
Although,
for
I
us.
mean, now that we're 20 years later, also feel free to call dudes back.
Yes, that's true too. That is true too. Like we don't need to subscribe to traditional gender roles. You are allowed as the woman to voice your interest and say that you want to have another date. That's okay.
I also say that because as a guy, I'm fortunate to be in a relationship because I'm terrible at dating. And anytime somebody I've liked has taken the initiative with me, it has always been the most ego, I should say self-esteem boosting, affirmative thing ever. Because I also feel like I grew up in that generation where every female friend of mine I ever knew would just constantly tell me stories about guys who did not know what the limit was.
Yes.
And so I was always grew up traumatized by being afraid to be that story to the next person's friend, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever somebody took initiative, it's really good. Share. It's just you should split your checks and you should split your affection.
Yes.
And your attention to each other.
This reminds me, this will be a very short story, and hopefully, Nick, you remember this. So I'm also terrible at dating, but part of why I'm terrible at dating is that I am completely oblivious, painfully oblivious.
Oh yeah, I think I know where this is going.
And so I was at a party at Nick's house. This was quite a few years. This was a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And after the party, I can't remember the woman's name. I feel so bad. But
Well, if you were there last 2 weekends ago, she was still there. She was there again.
was she there again?
I think. Oh no! Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different person.
You're thinking of a different person. I was like,
Oh,
she
okay.
definitely wasn't there. So I was at a party at Nick's house, and I was talking to this woman, and we were chit-chatting, whatever. And evidently, She was very obviously hitting on me, and I did not notice this at all. And afterwards, Nick was like, I think I messaged Nick, and I was like, oh, so and so is like super nice. Like, I really like them. And Nick was like, yes, I think they like you too. I was like, oh, yeah, no, like, I think we got along. He's like, no. Like, they were obviously hitting on you. And I was like, oh, I did not realize. Like, that's way over my head. So that is part of my problem when it comes to dating, is that like you have to be really, really obvious in your
I'm basically
liking of me, because if you don't, then I just assume that you're being a nice person, and I don't think that you have any romantic or like physical interest in me whatsoever. I just don't.
Yeah.
That's just not where my brain goes.
I believe that person literally said to me later on, like, I really like your friend. She was like trying to figure out, like,
Yeah, I got a feel.
the whole, like, what team does this person play for? Am I barking up the wrong tree kind of thing? And I was like, maybe you should ask.
Like, maybe you should ask. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring up that funny story because it reminded me of that. Okay, so they also Nick finds a hair in the car, which belongs to a redhead, and we find out that the victim is a redhead. So Nick's original, she got on the bus, so this is like a stupid case, and why do I have to follow this case? Now he's actually interested in it and thinks there might actually be a crime here. So now he's actually interested in this case, when before he couldn't care less about it.
He's got the interesting case, right? I think
Yes.
he says that.
Yes, now he's like, oh, we have the interesting case. We then head back to Catherine and Warwick with the family. They take ear prints from everyone. They process the prints at home, which is like, we have a nice little montage here. But also, Can you just process evidence at somebody's house? I feel like this is not something that you should be allowed to.
This is definitely a Hollywood moment, right?
Yes.
Yes. You would take stuff, you would go back. There'd probably, these tests, again, CSI effect, these tests are probably things that require an expert, several people to sign off on, provide some anonymity, like should be double blind, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like a lineup, like here's 3 ear prints. Yes. Does this match any of them kind of thing?
Yeah.
But it's way more dramatic on television. Just be like, dun, 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 it matches this guy. Here's my one note from this.
Okay.
I thought the other son, he looked so guilty that whole scene. I was like, did that actor have to pee during the scene? He was like rocking back and forth and moving, and I was like, and then like he had nothing to do. I kept waiting for it to be like, oh, it was his idea all along.
Yeah, like that was gonna be.
He put his brother up. He was covering for him. There were 2 of them, and he's hiding it. Yeah, no, I think. I kept being like, oh, this person's gonna be on it, or this person's gonna be in on it, and I was like, I couldn't get over that scene, how guilty he looked. Like he had to be involved. There had to be more going on here, other than this one other person, and that did not bear true.
No, not at all.
At one point, I literally predicted that Dad was in on it.
Oh, okay.
And that was also not true.
So they find the match, as Nick was saying. It is not the son that looked really guilty, is actually the son named Jason. We then see a reenactment of him stealing the painting. We learn that the father doesn't want to press any charges. They ask Jason where the painting is. He says that he sold it or got rid of it, and that's when Catherine lets him know, like, hey, we can charge you with a crime if you don't return the painting. And that's when he lets her know that it's actually in the trunk of his car.
He's like, oh, back of my truck. It's like, first off, what kind of nut job would even do that? Because let's say the ear prints were too smudgy.
Right.
Well, I don't think they even knew there was an ear print, but why would you
No. Keep them close at hand.
Like, why would you even want the police to be there? Like, you could find it in the back of your car. But my notes literally say child number 2, Jason, matching ear print. Child number 1, up to no good.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's so bad. My predictions this episode, by the way, are not great.
That Nick already warned me. Nick already sent me a message and was like, hey, predictions pretty terrible for this one. And I was like, that's all right. Sometimes that makes good pod. So let's roll with the punches and see what happens.
Wait till you hear what I have to say about Scott Shelton when we get there.
Yes. All right. So speaking of Scott Shelton, we go to Grissom, Sarah, and Jim Brass at the Shelton's apartment. Sarah notices that there's no pictures of Kay Shelton, the wife, anywhere. Jim Brass finds bullets, also a gun. Grissom finds, and I'm going to make a note. Well, do I talk about this now or do I talk about this later? Maybe I'll talk about this later. So Grissom finds a green fiber and kind of insinuates, hey, like this is from a blanket, right? It gets cold in here and you needed a blanket because obviously Kay's body was found out wrapped in a blanket. But they make a big deal about it being a green fiber. We also realize that while there's not missing bullets from the gun, there are missing bullets from the like bullet ammunition rounds. And they borrow them from him. They then move to the hallway where they smell bleach. They then use luminol.
Do they say that?
They don't say it. They just say
they
it
sniff
sounds
around,
like, they
right?
say like, "Did you do laundry in here?" And then she says, "Bleach might, like cover it up, but bleach doesn't hide it or something.
Hide it to your eyes." I think they say.
Yeah, but it
like,
doesn't hide
doesn't
it from,
remove it.
Yeah. So they
I was trying to remember exactly how that scene went, but
something along those lines. And so they use luminol or some other compound to illustrate the blood streaks on the wall. This is when Sarah then confronts the husband. They have a little bit of a tussle, and she has a great line here. I think it's just kind of when she pushes away from him or when Grissom breaks him up.
She almost jumps the dude.
She does almost jump the dude. I like Sarah in this episode. And she says to him, "You don't know a handful," when she's yelling at him.
You don't know what a handful is.
Yeah, I'm like, that's so good, Sarah. Give it to him. And then this is also where we spoke about this earlier, where Grissom just seems completely oblivious as to why Sarah is emotionally invested in this case. He's completely oblivious, which, come on, Grissom. Again, men do better. You should not be oblivious as to why Sarah's really upset about this case. This shouldn't be a hard one to figure out.
Also, you should also be upset.
Yes, you should also be upset. So you should know. I think that's kind of where I'm coming from. You shouldn't be oblivious to her being upset because you should also be upset. You can be upset about how she's handling it, but you shouldn't be oblivious as to why she's feeling the way that she's feeling.
You could be the boss, like you can be the adult and say,
yes,
listen, I get it.
Yeah, but this isn't appropriate.
We're going to get this guy, but we have to do... It's like the Warwick, like the first episode or whatever, right? We got to do it the right way.
Yes.
So we can put him away.
Yes.
And that's his job. That's what he should be doing. But he's not even getting it, and this isn't social anxiety. I mean, I don't want to go back and harp on this is one of my big 3 things that Grissom had said earlier. And then so I expected him to be more mad for that. But let's pretend that wasn't a thing. Like you know how to tie your shoes, like you know how to do stuff as a human, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and this isn't appropriate. Right. And so they really, I think, unfairly pushed that part of his character here in a way that they don't at other times. Like if it was, it's like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. They're really good at being consistent about what he is tuned into and not tuned into, and they haven't quite figured that special sauce out for Grissom, I think.
Yeah, they have not.
And I think that's for audience buy-in super important.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see how it continues. It's really hard to show growth when your character isn't consistent, right? Mm-hmm. You need like a consistent baseline so people know that you've grown into,
right,
and you've learned something. Like the people around you have taught you how to queue up in these things that you might have been bad at before. So, yeah, Grissom is the one character I feel like they have had the hardest time settling into a character with him.
I agree.
And maybe it's just that the way the character was designed, all the different writers, all the different directors, they struggle with it. But I think this kind of scene is just a symptom of that. And I imagine by the time you get 2 seasons in, his character is cemented, and
yes.
And I think it'll create much better story points too.
Yes.
So I really look forward to that. I think as someone who hasn't seen the whole series, I think that's one of the areas the show will just get better and better at through time.
It does. That I don't mind spoiling for you. We head to Catherine and Warwick with the painting. This is when Catherine says that she doesn't feel like it's finished, like the case isn't finished. She's getting kind of a vibe that she doesn't feel like it's finished. Warwick has to peace out to go to court, though. But before he goes, he does tell Catherine that he spoke to Child Services and that he said that Catherine, is the boss. Like, she's an awesome mom and Eddie's a creep. So take that as you will, basically.
Which is good. I'm glad someone's saying that.
Yes.
Because that's, lost in, I think Catherine, I feel like, won't ever say that. But
Yes.
like, it's important that people in your life are also telling this person like, yeah, this guy is sketchy.
Yeah.
So like, of course he made this complaint because it's a power trip and he's corrupt and
Yes.
manipulative and stuff like that. Also in this scene, he like checks his beeper. Is like, oh, I got to go to court,
Yes.
which I think is super important for his storyline later on.
Okay. Oh, good point.
Because they never really address why, if the beeper was really for the court date or what.
Right. Like why it went off.
Yeah, so let's talk about that when we get back to talking about
Yeah.
work later.
Yeah, we will definitely come back around to that storyline. So we then do have a quick scene with Sarah Grissom and Jim Brass. They have a little walk and talk in the hallway, and Jim Brass lets them know that they need to place time of death 5 days ago. And Grissom does not like being told that, like, when he needs to place time of death, and doesn't want any sway over the evidence, but that's what Jim Brass says in order to put the husband away.
I love this scene. I think this is one of the best scenes in the whole episode because it is these characters being exactly who they are, right? We got a detective. He's like, to close this case, it needs to be 5 days ago.
Right.
It's also setting up for sort of like one of the subplots and twists.
Yes.
So it has a really important anchor. But you have Grissom being exactly the person that his character has been.
Yes.
Which is that, dude, the evidence just, it's like, I can't make it say 5 days. It's just going to be whatever the evidence says.
Right.
And that's what I'm going to come up for you. There's this scene. There's one other scene. I'll be curious if you can guess what it is. And that was like, this is like, I remember like a few episodes. It was a really good episode, and I was like, I love the writing and the direction of this show. In this episode, it's so good. Like when they had these character moments, I think that the actors shine. I think the writing shines. I think the directing shines. And this was one of them. And it's like they didn't really make a big deal of it. It was very subtle, but it's very cute. That Jim Brass was like, yeah, we just, gotta say 5 days, or we don't really have a case here. And Grissom's is like, it's just gonna say what it's gonna say, and it's just like, and they have like a look, but also like an understanding. That's where like the acting makes it so much better than like a script could ever make it. I was like, this is hands down one of my favorite scenes, and it's so small. I just remember like pausing and being like, oh, that was really good, especially on like watch number 2 where I already knew what was coming next.
Yes.
With the whole number of days, and I was like, oh, this was such a, like, the way they can like foreshadow and resolve things in the show is the best. I was like, that's the best writing skill they have. I'm sure it's like one dude in the writing room who's really good at this, and so it just pops up. It's like dotted through the episodes, but it's like one of the things that makes me say like, I know why people really like this show.
Yeah. We then get a little montage where Grissom is inspecting bugs. Sarah is investigating the blanket and the bullets. She realizes the bullets are unusual, so she sends part of it to Trace. She then goes and talks to Grissom, where Grissom tells her that the victim has been dead for 3 days, not 5.
Yep.
So didn't get the 5 days that Jim Brass was asking for.
Great foreshadowing.
Only got 3, right? Yes.
Even if it's one scene early.
Yes, even if it's one scene early. And then we go to a scene with an attorney with the husband, Scott Shelton. He was traveling 3 days before, so he couldn't have been the one to murder her because, he wasn't around. So they bring up the blood in the hallway, and they admit to the prior abuse to cover up murder. Jim Brass literally says, like, wow, you're admitting to prior abuse to cover up murder.
I was like, I don't know what the statute of limitations are, but you should arrest this dude right now.
Evidently. I mean, I'd have to look up,
just
Nevada
make him rot
laws,
in jail,
Yeah, just for spousal abuse.
I have, I think, a very choice prediction.
Oh, okay.
For,
is this
for Mr. Shelton?
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, all right, clearly, I didn't mention this earlier. I had a note when they were in the apartment. I was like, the evidence is everywhere in this apartment. It's too easy, right? So obviously, it's not proving that he did it, right? It's going to be proving how he did it is going to be the episode, right? And so at this point, I was like, okay, 3 days. Grissom did the math. Grissom's a bug man. He knows what's up. 3 days must be the right answer, right? It couldn't possibly be 5 days pretending to be 3 days. So clearly, Scott Shelton drove from New Orleans back to Las Vegas to kill his wife so he would have a clad alibi. So what they're going to have to, so I literally wrote, they need to show that he missed appointments in New Orleans and then that was away, and that's how they were going to prove the case.
Not quite what happened, guys.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, not quite.
If you haven't watched the episode for some reason,
go ahead and watch it. Then come back and listen to it.
We'll wait. We'll be here.
Yeah,
No,
we'll be here.
but you'll quickly find out that none of that is true.
Yes, that is true. Is that none of that is true?
I think that was my most proud prediction that I've ever made. It's a great plot. Like some other episode, that could be the plot to a different episode.
I mean, it is solid.
It's just not the plot to
It
this
is
one.
not the one here. We head to Grissom and Eckley having a conversation. This is where Eckley talks him up about being a bug guy. But this is also when he lets Grissom know that Warwick had someone on his staff sub for him in court. And the reason that he wasn't in court was that he was gambling.
Yeah. And he oddly knows specifically where he was gambling.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was a little creepy. I was like, oh, did you already...
But maybe he was digging into it because he was pissed about the other thing. But it was kind of like, I was like, oh, Warwick's back at gambling. We had this bet with Nick a couple episodes ago.
And you were wondering, you were like, oh, does this loop back to being a storyline? And I was like, we'll find out.
Yeah. Now it's setting him up. I mean, I like Warwick, but they should fire him.
Yeah, he's had several strikes against him at this point, and we're only 10 episodes in, and he's had several strikes against him.
I think they answered my question from 8 episodes ago, by the way. Last episode, when Nick touted that he was a CSI level 3 and Warwick was not. So
oh yeah. I thought
even though I swear to God, Grissom said they were promoting him.
Yeah, Grissom did say that they were promoting
Nick was
him.
like, CSI level 3, I get to be the husband and you have to be the wife because somehow that's punishment. Remember when they were emanating on the plane?
Yeah, you're right, because I could have swore that he promoted him as well.
Maybe he got redemoted for...
Maybe he did. For bad behavior. We'll find out. So we head to Sarah asleep in the kitchen. Grissom comes in, wants her to do a background check on Warwick. We then quickly head to Warwick and Catherine. They learn that the painting is a forgery. They detect titanium in it, so they come to the conclusion that Jason, the son, stole the original and then gave back a forgery to his father, or the one that he had in his truck, or that he was going to give back was a forgery.
Do they have a whole thing there? They're about like, oh, we're gonna to work later or something. I don't know. I wrote down like at some point somebody said they were working to 4 a.m. And I remember thinking
that happened. That happened already.
Isn't that your shift?
Yeah, you're the night shift guys.
Don't you work to 4 a.m. every night? And I was like, that was one of those things where I saw this underlying plot where they keep forgetting that they're the night shift.
Yes.
And they keep wanting to film during the day.
Oh gosh, I got to work until 4 a.m.
They film a lot of scenes during the day for what I presume is I think 10 to 6 is the overnight police shift usually.
Okay.
I think it's 10 to 6, 6 to 2 to 10. Usually the 3 shifts. It could be different in a lot of places, but yeah, I was like 4 a.m. But I was right before my the titanium paint comment.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't really... Somewhere between war, gambling, and titanium paint, somebody had that conversation.
Yeah, that conversation did pass. So we go to Nick vacuuming the car from his crime scene. He notes that the carpet is too clean, so he checks for blood, and it is positive for blood.
Yep. I just to step back a second. This is the titanium paint is when I thought Dad was in on it. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was insurance fraud.
Okay, that's a fair one.
I thought Dad's in on it. It's insurance fraud. They're getting forgeries, and then I don't think we knew all of them were forgeries. That comes later.
We did not know yet. No.
And so I thought in this one it was like he was having a fake painting stolen, right? And the real one is somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he's just gonna hang it back up after he gets $100,000 or something.
Yeah. We then changed tone quite drastically, where we have Sarah arriving to Grissom's office and is asking Grissom, what do you do if you hear the victim's screams? Grissom is trying to comfort her, sort of, and letting her know that, she has empathy, it's normal to feel this way, you have empathy. And her response is to ask him if he wants to sleep with her.
Yes.
Which throws Grissom for a loop.
Can you say that again?
Like, who needs roller coasters when Sarah Seidel is going to throw those lines out at you? And so
I wonder if you read that in a magazine of, like, forensic or whatever.
Yeah.
You'd cite his source.
Is that your source, Grissom? And she makes note of oh, well, so when you wake up, under the blanket with me and I'm, and the under the blanket line is what sticks out to Grissom. You see a little light bulb. You don't actually see a little light bulb, but figuratively, you see a little light bulb, bloop, right
I
over
actually
Grissom's head.
misread this light bulb, by the way.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I thought so now I have a note about how I thought he refrigerated the body, and that's because he's talking about being cold or something.
Yes.
And I was like,
waking up in a cold sweat, I think.
If he put the body into like a freezer and then went to New Orleans and then came back and then dumped the body, it would look like he killed. Also, great. If you're a writer out there writing a crime-based show, feel free to steal all my better ideas. Again,
gives free permission.
Again, I feel like I often invent plots that I think are better than the real plots. Although not as often. I feel like the first couple episodes I had a couple, and it's been a while. So, but yeah, all my bad predictions are all like they're totally feasible for any one of these style of shows. Episode easily could have gone that direction, but so if you're out there and you have writer's block, feel free to steal my ideas. They're public domain as far as I'm concerned.
Hopefully people appreciate that. We head on over to Grissom. He gets the blanket out, and this is where I denote, and maybe this is just my TV. I don't have the best TV, I'll be honest. The blanket isn't green.
No, it's plaid, isn't it?
Yes, but it's like there's not even like green in it. Like they make this whole big deal about finding a green fiber at the couch and that matches the blanket, and then they show the blanket and it's not green. And I was like, what is happening?
I thought it had some green in it. Hold on. I'll continue, but I will confirm for us briefly.
All right.
Oh, you're right. It's in the picture for the episode. It's when he has the blanket up on the table.
Yes.
Remember, because is this the scene where he's like, oh, it looks like, maybe this is why I thought there was refrigeration, like there's little like white marks on it too?
Possibly.
Yeah.
So we then go to Grissom outside with a pig, and we learn that he is starting to theorize that the blanket decreased exposure for the insects, so the timeline, his original timeline, might not be correct. We also learn in his exchange with Jim Brass that the pig is most like humans, which is why he needs to use a pig carcass for this experiment as he's trying to determine the time of death. We get a little montage of him taking several pictures of the pig, and then in a very sweet little turnaround, Sarah arrives with a thermos and a blanket and wraps Grissom up in the blanket and gives him a thermos and says thanks for obviously going back to this case and revisiting this case, which has obviously been haunting her.
This, by the way, is my other favorite scene in the episode.
Oh, okay.
I thought this was so good. I thought because there had been this friction between them, right? It's we're going to let Grissom, he's doing the adult thing, right? He's being the good friend now, right? He's understanding her. And he's just going to go and put the effort in. And then she shows up and recognizes it, and she has appreciation for him.
Yes.
And she's going to stick there and stick it out with him because she sees that he's going to do a really hard thing. And I thought for those two characters, that's a great resolution, because that's like the way Grissom is. Like he's figured out that he was doing something wrong right now. And he's figured out that he needs to apologize to his friend, but he's too weird or I would say neurodivergent to just come out and say, hey, I'm sorry. And so it's like people have different love languages. One of his love languages is sort of like act, right? He needs to carry out this attrition by himself. Like that's how he's going to apologize. And that's so human. That's like, we just know people and have been in situations like this where people do this thing. And it's also very sentimental. Like she shows up and you can see and she acts it really well, and the demeanor on her face. Mm-hmm. Like I was like a little teary. I'm even talking about it now. I'm a little teary eyed. I love this moment. Aww. It's great. It's like real friendship, right?
Yes.
This is like real friend. This is what real humans do for each other in the real world. That it's not Hollywood or anything. I do, by the way, have the blanket up, unfortunately, because I need to get whatever that workaround is for screenshots.
Oh, yeah.
But it has a lot of red in it. It has a lot of beige, white in it, blue, yellow stripes, but it does have green in it. Okay. I would say green is like a secondary color. Yeah. But a fiber is a fiber, and there's certainly some green patches in here.
All right, that's right.
But when you look at it holistically, you would not be like, oh, that's a green blanket.
Yeah.
It also reminds me, I was very upset when they pulled out the blanket and there was no scene where they tried to match up the ripped thread to a thread from the blanket.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've had all these other the matches. My favorite matching up scene is the match, when the match matches. But they also had like a hair, they had the fingernail or the toenail or whatever it was that Grissom got out of the bathroom. They've had some great, like, we just match these two things together and they connect scenes. And I really thought we were going to have another one, and we did not.
We did not, no.
That's my biggest disappointment of this episode. Everything else with this episode, my biggest complaint, whole episode, if we didn't have a microscopic match
to the fibers, the carbon fibers.
Yeah, or a footprint. I mean, come on.
We go to our very obvious storyline C with Nick with the detective, and the detective lets him know that there's been a hit on the credit card of the missing woman at the Four Aces Hotel. They bust into a hotel room to find the missing woman, Cheryl, chained to a bed, and not in a "I've been held captive" sort of way, but in a "I am willingly participating in this" sort of
in a "I have been held captive" sort of way.
Yes.
Oh,
wink,
no.
wink, nudge, nudge. We learn in the discussion with her that the blood from the car is from an injured dog. And basically they say she has to figure out what she wants to tell her husband about what happened.
I love the way that it's like, all right, with the interesting storyline, this is too clean. There's one red hair in this whole back of this van. Like, we cleaned it really well, but we also left one hair behind. And we finally get down, and the woman's just like sleeping around, pimping herself out.
Yeah, she's having a good old time, just not with her
You
husband.
know, living her best life.
Yep.
I mean, I would say it would be fine if he knew about it, but he
does
really
not.
He really does not know about it.
We support ethical non-monogamy here, but that requires talking to your partner about seeing other people, and that's not what happened here.
Yeah, you could have 7 girlfriends, but if you have a secret 8th girlfriend, you're cheating on the first 7.
That is true.
But yeah, no, it was really kind of funny because they really did have the lame-o case at the end of the day.
They had a super lame case at the end of the day.
They don't spend a lot of time in this episode. I would say there's 2.5 storylines.
Yeah.
This episode, I think there's like 4 scenes for the whole thing.
Yeah, they get very little airtime in this episode.
I would be very disappointed if the detective doesn't show up in any future episodes, because
we shall see.
That would be the most important thing. That relationship with Nick would be the most important thing we got out of this storyline if it continues. Yep. Otherwise it's just kind of like a little time filler thing.
We move back to a scene with the sheriff. This is with Grissom, Jim Brass, and Sarah. And
I hate the sheriff now. I was fine with him before. I hate him now.
I guess I sort of understand where he's coming from here. Like, I don't like him, but I get where he's coming from here. But this is where Grissom lets him know that actually it was 5 days, not 3, based on, because the blanket changed the exposure. And this is when he asked Jim Brass, like, do you understand this thing with the bugs? And Jim Brass says that he generally understands the insect thing. And the sheriff tells Grissom to get something that a jury can actually understand, that this isn't going to hold up in court. They're not going to be able to explain to a jury what's happening here with these insects.
Part of why I hate him is because he's right. Like,
he's very right.
But I don't want him to be right.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I hesitate to call him a villain. He's a foil, right? He's like a check, a voice of reason kind of thing. But he's just consistently a party pooper. That's why I don't like him.
Yeah.
I don't like his character, I should say.
Yeah, that's fair. We go to storyline B with Catherine and Warwick bringing back the painting, and they show the father that it's a forgery, and then they also show him that basically all of his paintings are forgeries. So he has 10 million in forgeries, and they also let him know that the originals were found in Jason's dorm room. This leads to Jason having a little bit of a come to Jesus moment with his dad, like saying, like, you don't know me, you don't even see me, this is why I did this, because like I'm standing right in front of you and you'd rather just stare at your paintings all day than just seeing me as your son.
Like, you can't say he did it for the money because he didn't sell any of them. He literally had it. I remember thinking like, what a gamble. What if this was like the first one? And I was like, oh yeah, they went to his dorm room, so he must have them all there, right? And if he has them all, that means it wasn't a money thing. No. Right? It was just, and then I was like, and then the dad's gonna push charges.
Yes, the father decides to press charges.
And so I'm like, but like, he didn't even get all your art back. It's not even stolen. It's just relocated. Like it's like your son. It's like you really are that petty. The son's right. Like, you really do care more about the art. You don't like that he hoodwinked you
Yeah.
for so long, right? It's not like he sold all your art.
Yeah.
You can literally just hang it up today, you know?
Yeah. Well, the father says to him, "You wanted my attention. You got it."
Yeah. Which is, again, it's not healthy.
No.
And the best part is, once he says yes, there's no takesy backsies here. His
No.
son's going to be charged, and
Found
he's
guilty.
going to be a criminal for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's kind of sad. I mean, first, I'm not defending the son, but like, dad's like, we went from like, I stole one of your paintings, I'm going to sell it, to I stole all your paintings, but I'm not selling any of them. I just wanted to prove a point, right? That you're
Yes.
not paying attention to me, right?
Yes.
And he didn't tell his dad. It's not like it didn't hurt his dad. He was doing it for himself. And so it's like, in a lot of ways, it's like, Dad, and I got to turn him over to the cops. And I was like, oh, if I was mom, I'd be like, no, we're not. Where's
This is not happening.
Stay, like, don't let this dude push you around. Like, stand up. This is your son.
Yeah.
You're going to ruin his life. And it's just like, I was like, this is, to me, like, I was like, well, I guess the point is to show that dad is really that shallow, right?
Right, yeah.
He really cares about his material possessions more. When it was the first time, it was fine. But then, like, he couldn't get over the notion that he was fooled, that he didn't even know his own art was fake, right?
Right.
Like, because that's the thing about rich people and art is like, I talked about art that I own earlier, and the artist who died, I bought a very nice original piece of artwork, but I have a really cool print of his. And I'm one of those people who thinks a lot of times prints are just as good as originals.
Yeah.
And I tend to, not have too many originals because, they're great for artists. It's a great way to support your artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I can't tell the difference between original and print. I like the art for what it looks like.
Right.
I don't want the art because I need a status symbol.
Right.
And this guy, he needs the art to be a status symbol.
Yeah.
And if his friends knew that he had fake art on his wall for months and he didn't know it, he probably showed it off to a bunch of them. It would ruin his reputation and it would make him feel like less of a person.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry to use the 2000s term, less of a man, right? That's the term they would have used. But yeah, so yeah, it's a cool resolution. It's a cool scene. I was like shell shocked. I was like, really? That's okay. That's really good take. I guess that's consistent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that was mind blowing. I was like, man, what a bad. If it's not a real human being, but in the real world, I was like, that dude would regret that decision.
Yeah, you would think so. Well,
So
you'd hope
fast.
so. You'd hope so. So that wraps up storyline B. We head back on to storyline A with Grissom about to go into autopsy. Sarah walks up. She wants to know, how does he just move on? Then we have a very Grissom moment, and I assume that this is the moment that you felt was very Grissom, where he tells the story about the shovels.
Yeah.
And about the father of forensic science, Sung Soo, and how, science nerds have to kind of come back around every now and again, and we just have to deal with it. Comes in waves, and just get to the point, Grissom. Get to the point.
I didn't like the scene because we already did the song and dance with Sarah, right? Where Grissom was going to do the right thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It almost cheapens the scene that earlier I was like, I love this scene so much.
Yep. Yeah.
You'd already done this. You didn't need it was so obvious that it was going to be that body.
Spoiler alert, we found out the body is Kay Shelton.
Yeah, it was.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah, it was too. So it was a little unnecessary. I feel like
It's a weird order.
This is one of those things where I thought we don't know what scene we're going to have to cut.
Yeah.
We don't know how we're going to have to edit that. Let's put this in a couple places just in case, so we make sure we have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt like unnecessary. And then his little Grissom diatribe was like, Sung Soo is not the father of forensic science. Come on, man. You wouldn't even think that. It was like throwaway line, man.
Yeah. But
it
was a very Grissom thing to happen, though, was to go on a crazy story sidetrack. So
I could tell that this scene was not that great because it's not even in my notes.
Yeah, it was.
I was like, I don't have anything I need to write down here.
I did note it down, but I also take.
Well, you
extensive
write down.
notes,
Yeah, you write down every scene.
Yeah. We then go to the autopsy where we find a blue mark on the head that leads to Sarah realizing that it is Teflon from the bullet.
I thought it was going to be pool chuck.
Oh, yeah, that would be a callback to the previous episode for sure. So we see Sarah test firing the gun and using the bullets, and we see the blue trace on the paper shootout. We then see the actual reenactment of the crime, and then they kind of go back to the sheriff, I think just Grissom and Sarah talk about. No, Sarah said that they're going to be able to bury him under the evidence. That it will be easier to educate the jury on bullets than insects, and let's just bury him underneath the evidence. We then get a very satisfying Jim Brass arresting Scott Shelton scene, and
I didn't want to jump in, but I want to say something about the blue tip. Is that so? I watched this YouTube channel. It's like it's a very long story of how I got there, but they shoots a lot of guns, and they do like color code the tips of stuff. Okay. I remember thinking like, why is Teflon blue? Like you've ever owned a blue Teflon pan, you know? And I tried to look up like what a blue tip bullet is, and it was just like, oh, it's a polymer.
Oh, okay.
Or something, and it's like for like flight. They're usually hollow tip bullets, and
okay.
And like the plastic like basically fills in what would be a hollow tip. And I was like, that's not really at all what the thing looked like. And so I couldn't really like corroborate the blue tip bullet ammo that he had. But they do like color a bunch of different ammunition, and I think that like it's usually way more expensive and way more rare. So it's actually like a really potentially great forensic, because if you were on like a jury and you were like, well, what's the odds that this was just like someone else had a similar bullet? It's going to be really, really small now.
Right.
Because it's got this, blue tip on it and stuff.
Yeah. So we wrap up the episode with Sarah walking into Grissom's office, and she sadly has to confirm what Eckley told Grissom, that she checked out Warwick and he was in fact in the casino when he was supposed to be in court. And we're left with Grissom pondering this information and seeming, understandably pretty upset about it.
Prodigal son.
I know.
Unlike
his favorite.
Unlike Mr. Ziegler, who threw his son under the bus.
We'll have to find out. We'll have to see what Grissom does with his favorite son.
Grissom wants to weigh his options.
So, Nick, what did you think about today's episode? I know you talked about it already a little bit, but let's do a recap.
I like the episode. I think I mentioned like Stokes' storyline. It felt a little shallow. It wasn't too much there. But the other two storylines I both liked a lot. I thought there was a lot going on. Again, I feel like this is like falls under what I would consider like a core episode, right? Versus some of these standalone episodes. They're advancing character storylines. So we got Bugs and we got Grissom, and we're talking about how he's expert. We got Eckler in the episode. Eckler's got to both like stand him up and tear him down at the same time. Eckley. It's fine. I'm bad with names in real life. I'm really bad with names and appearing every 3 episodes in a TV show.
That's fair.
I do not mind being informed. But yeah, but we had character development. We have work, the gambling storylines moving forward. We got Catherine, her daughter, that storyline's moving forward.
Yep.
So I really like the episode on the broad sense a lot. I thought this was really good. I remember thinking, I bet Lauren really likes the story because we got 3 plots and a thing. But also there were some great moments, and everyone was involved and everyone had a thing. I mentioned the weak point, but that was Nick. I also really liked both the other storylines. I feel like Catherine is often turning into the "we're not done here yet" character.
Yes, she
like
is.
To me, I don't know how often that happens for the next 10 seasons, but I would love to get a little bit more variety into like her like stands, right? It's just like, oh, I got a feeling, and I was like, oh, how about give her a little bit more than that, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll see that comes, but I really like her and Work together. They have a great sort of buddy cop.
They have good chemistry.
I do like that they change it up, like who's working with who. That's good. It's good for the show. I think it's good for the characters. But this is sort of like I think the most common arrangement that we've run into in the last few episodes. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, so my thoughts on it are, I enjoy it. I think I do think that the storyline Nick's storyline is entirely pointless, and you could take it out of this episode and it would barely affect the episode one way or another. So that's like a little annoying, but I think storylines A and B are strong. I think storyline B isn't super strong it's pretty straightforward. They find out really quickly who it is, but I think, as you were mentioning, it's a good highlight of Catherine and Warwick together. And
but the ear print montage.
I know. I mean, the show does love a good montage. So, apologize for the barking, guys. We're almost done. So, storyline B, I didn't find it all that interesting, but I did enjoy the chemistry between Catherine and Warwick. I enjoyed that they brought back up the storyline with child services and her daughter, and we got to see how much that was affecting her. So, I think that did give another facet to Catherine's character. So, and I like that Sarah got to have some big emotions in this episode and have some pretty strong feelings and some big opinions, and I like that about her, and I like that got highlighted in this episode. So
I would have
overall,
liked this episode.
I enjoyed it.
I would have liked this episode better if my predictions were a little bit more reasonable.
That's fair.
No, that's not. That doesn't really make a way on my decision, but it just makes me sad. But yeah, no, this is a good episode. I think I call it 4 out of 5.
We will be back next week with season 1, episode 11, I-15 Murders. In the meantime, you can find us on Facebook at Who Are You: a CSI podcast. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Who Are You CSI Pod. You can also email us at whoareyoucsipod@gmail.com. And if you would like to tell your friends about us or give us a shout out on social media, we would really appreciate that. You can also use the hashtag WhoAreYouCSIPod. We will monitor for that. We'd love to get your feedback. And yeah, otherwise we will see you next week.
Thank you. No spoilers.
No spoilers.